encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things preaching and ministry. Welcome to Season 13, Episode 9 of this podcast, on which today we're going to discuss ministering to a church plant in a new community. I'm so excited to have with me today Chad Garrett, who's joining us as the minister of the Church of Christ in Indian Land, not too far from where we are at Gold Hill Road in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Welcome, Chad. Glad you're here.
Thanks a lot for having me here today, Robert. Look forward to sharing with you and learning and growing and becoming a better preacher.
This is going to be cool. You're in a very unique situation because you preach for a brand new congregation in what is essentially a brand new community, right? Mm-hmm. You were there when the fire department was set up, right, in Indian Land. So it's just a really, really neat opportunity that you have. And I think it's unique, but I think it'll make for some interesting conversation as we go throughout our time together today. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
Thanks for coming on. You spent the majority of your time as a minister in foreign missions. Would that be a good characterization of
That's right.
where
That's
you've
right.
been?
It's, I really cut my teeth on the mission field, so to speak. That's where I jumped into the ministry component of the Lord's work and really enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
Still do.
Cool. And of course, you're still a part of a lot of that. The last year, I know, affected a lot of that. And
did.
For a while, we thought you were going to be stuck in, the Philippines for a little while?
That's it. That's right. That's
when all
where
the
we
travel
were.
shut down. So tell us a little bit about that overseas work that you've done and that you continue to do, where you've been and sort of what your MO has been during those trips and things.
Sure. So this is exciting. I won't take too much time talking about it. I'll sum up over 10 years. So Amanda and I assimilate it to Acts chapter 18, verses 1 through 3, where Paul is identifying with Aquila and Priscilla and the fact that they're tent makers by trade. Amanda and I, my wife, my high school sweetheart, we went to nursing school together, high school together, nursing school together, and we really began mission work as nurses. And so that's how we started with that trade. And our very first mission trip actually wasn't medically related. It was just enough to get our tongues wet when we were in Jamaica for about a week. But our second trip was completely medical related into the Philippines, and that was in 2009. And so going forward from there, what we did was we worked in these medical campaigns where we worked alongside other evangelists and preachers in the Philippines, and we reached out to communities through mobile medical clinics throughout the Philippines and the northern island of Luzon, and specifically the province of Pangasinan, and I made a lot of friends, and also did church work too, and that's sort of how it got started. Now, during those years, I began migrating more and more toward the gospel aspect of mission work, and went back to school, studied Bible at Amherst University, which was formerly Southern Christian, and then got more heavily involved in a preaching school in the Philippines, as well as an orphanage, church planting, evangelism, which is my favorite, door-to-door, small group Bible studies, my favorite. After about 5 years in the Philippines, I transitioned over, and I felt like God was leading me toward Kenya, East Africa. We had some contacts here at Gold Hill Road who had work going that they were supporting in Kenya. So I went to look and really fell in love with that work, and spent the last 5 years predominantly going to Kenya without any medical missions. It was strictly gospel evangelism type missions, working with churches and restoring churches. Some, when I say restoring, weren't meeting at all. Some were meeting in small numbers, but were broken in some way, shape, form, or fashion, had lost their distinctness as God's people in the New Testament, maybe have become more associated with denominationalism in the standpoint of some of their practices and some of the things that they were doing. So just trying to achieve New Testament Christianity, which they were excited to do too. And so in the last 5 years, that's where I spent a lot of time.
Okay, very cool. Now, you mentioned the association with the church at Gold Hill Road, where I get to minister now. And, for a while, you were kind of like the missionary in residence, I think is what they told me the title was. How long was that?
See, I came on board as the missionary in residence in 2010.
Okay.
And
describe for people like what that meant, what the job description was.
It's a really unique ministry opportunity that the leadership here had a vision about, which they brought it to me, which is really neat. I had never really heard of it.
Yeah.
At the time, I was working as a nurse, and I was trying to raise support to do gospel medical missions. And at the time, we had just moved to this area in late 2009 and 2010. We'd moved to this area, and we placed membership here at Gold Hill Road. And the elders said, "Hey, we have an idea. We want to plant a new congregation in Clover. And instead of adding on to our building, we want to plant a new congregation in Clover, and we think we're going to lose potentially 55 to 75 members. Why don't we help you accomplish some of your mission goals overseas? And why don't you help us accomplish some of our local evangelism goals?" And so that was the partnership that we endeavored in together, and it was really great. Yeah. No complaints at all. It was really wonderful. We had a great church plant at Clover. In fact, I delivered the first couple of sermons there.
Cool.
And we anticipated about 55 to 75 people going. I think around 55 people did go, and that congregation continued to grow upwards to about 100. And they're autonomous and they're doing well today. Yeah. And so I stayed on board and continued, Bible studying. We had several baptisms here. Actually wrote a book about it called "To the Ends of the World" that Tom Holland read and forwarded for me. Yeah. And I know you love Tom Holland, so we both share that love for him. And but no, that was a great opportunity where it was essentially a split role. Yeah. I about half the year of my time was going overseas back and forth with missions. I would take people with me, those who had never gone on a mission field before, so that they could see what it was like, to those who were experienced. And we would set up, gospel meetings, gospel campaigns, Bible studies, and we would do those sort of things. Some benevolent outreaches here and there, especially for the widows of these local congregations. Our focus was not on these trips, a preaching school, but was more on the church, the local church and the local community. And then when I came back here, I met with people here and took people with me to Bible study with others. And there were other people who baptized other people here, and that was a great time too.
That's cool. So about, a little over a year ago now, the church in Indian Land was planted. Similar situation from what you just described at Clover, right? The eldership here realized that not only was there a need for a congregation of the Lord's church in Indian Land, but there were also quite a few people who were coming here from that direction. And so it makes sense, the eldership here believes, to rather than have people driving 45 minutes, let's just have them go there, and that way they can bless that community too. That launched in January of 2020 with no knowledge of what would come in March. And I want us to talk about that a little bit as we go. But tell us about Indian Land, South Carolina. When I tell people about it, they say, that's a strange name for a community.
Yeah, that is an interesting name. There is actually an Indian reservation in Catawba area, which is not far away. But the Indian Land community is sandwiched between Lancaster, the city of Lancaster, and essentially as you keep going north up into the Ballantyne, Pineville area into North Carolina.
Those are suburbs of Charlotte.
Yeah, suburbs, South Charlotte area. And so in between is this place called Indian Land that man, not too long ago had around 10 to 12,000 people, but now has 30 to 40,000 plus people. We really don't have an accurate count.
Yeah.
It has grown so fast. Neighborhoods of 2,500 homes, 3,500 homes. It's conveniently located to the border of North Carolina. A rather quick commute to Charlotte. But yet also, you continue going further south and you'll be out in the country where there's farmland and that sort of thing.
It doesn't take long in South Carolina to get to the country.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, the people in Indian land, it seems to be a neighborhood type community. I think it's similar in that way to Fort Mill, that, it's rare that you find somebody who was born and raised here.
Yes.
Most people like me are like you are transplants. We've moved here from some other place, and you'll find that in Indian land.
Which makes a pretty interesting melting pot of ideas and backgrounds too, which is unique.
Yeah, there's a lot of people from Ohio, Virginia, and West Virginia. I seem like I hear that constantly.
Same. I'm like, well, what are all these people? What's happening in Ohio?
Yeah, I know. So great community.
Yeah.
It's a really busy community, really young community. There's lots of families. They also have retirement areas in the community. So it's a very well mixed community, diverse. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot of business moving into the area. A lot of small
popping
businesses.
up like crazy. Businesses, yeah, you're right. Chain, small business, the whole thing. It's just everywhere. Really, really cool. Don't you think Charlotte probably is a lot of the credit for the growth that we're seeing here in Fort Mill, where this building is? Same in Rock Hill, where is your address in Rock Hill address?
It is, yes.
Mine is too. And Indian Land the same. I mean, all these areas, just as Charlotte continues to grow. The latest metric I heard was like 2.3 million people in the general Charlotte area.
Wow.
It's no wonder there's no homes for sale.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, there's been a lot of businesses, a lot of banking, a lot of corporations that have moved in. And then some of that, outerlying areas, there's been businesses that have built, like in Chester, there's been some businesses move out there and hire a lot of employees. And so there has been a lot of movement into the area. Yeah.
So it was, there was vision cast some years ago to purchase some land in Indian Land for the purpose of a church plant.
Yes.
That happens to be a fantastic location now,
yes,
which is pretty cool. Tell us about the church there, and you can, if you want to talk about the early days. Of course, the building has only recently been completed.
That's right,
and you all have moved into it now. And there was a period of transition that was only made more difficult by COVID, and all of the local meeting places where you could go were closed or restricted or whatever. Tell us about the church there, if you want to, just whatever you want to say about the church in Indian Land.
Sure. Well,
how can you do that in a brief amount of time?
I know. Anyway. Yeah, I'd like to give you a little history on how we got there, and then talk to you a little bit about how we're at where we are now, how we got to our location now, and then the congregation itself. So Gold Hill Road Church of Christ has never wanted to be a mega church. Has expanded a couple of times to accommodate around 400 people. And once reaching that number, that's where the Clover Church plant came from, is what they've reached that number and said, instead of building on more, let's plant another church where people are coming from. The same thing
because there's no congregations in these towns, right? And people are driving from there.
That's right.
It just makes sense to plant them there.
Yes, that's correct. So Gold Hill Road Church of Christ essentially became a planting congregation, which is incredibly biblical and exciting.
Yeah.
Again, after the Clover plant, we started filling up here again. And so, again, the thought process was, let's look for a place where people are coming from, where there might be a place of growth. And that was identified as Indian Land. And so a piece of property was sought after and purchased, and that began rather quickly after our Clover plant. Now, there was a pretty good long process to get to where we are today, but around 30 or 40 or so people committed to going to Indian Land. That number grew slightly and hit upwards of 55 to 60, and then it kind of backed down a little bit as we got to the launching point. But It was
years-long process.
Yeah,
right?
years.
Maybe
yeah.
even up to a decade almost.
Yeah, I'd say the thought process probably began as sort of verbal conversations with Joe Manning before he stepped down
As an elder, yeah.
as an elder here at Gold Hill Road. I'd say that process started, like I said, shortly after the clover plant.
Yeah.
What's our next plant type of conversation, and then it really started taking off. Probably 4 to 5 years before we actually launched. And of course, I wasn't a part of any of those real formal discussions.
It was
at
never
all.
the intention that you would be the minister there.
No, I loved mission work.
Just sort of what happened.
To stay.
Yeah.
And they started meeting here and there at random places just to try to identify who might be with us and what the interest might be. And they were looking for a preacher, and they were looking for a place where they could rent temporarily. They approached me about it. So a couple of people, but I said, no, mission work is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to stay right here. And I was happy doing what I was doing. Why change it? I felt like this was what God wanted me to do. Well, I'd say another year went by or so. They're still looking for a preacher. They've interviewed some, and things just didn't quite click yet. And and I was approached again, which I politely declined.
Okay.
And then
the knocks keep coming.
That's it. And they were all, everybody's great. I know everybody here at Gold Hill, so they're all like, "Oh, we understand you love mission work." So. But ended up having a serious conversation with one of the leaders that were involved with Indian Land, who's now a shepherd there. And we ended up having more formal discussions and prayed about it and talked to many people about it. And here comes, 2019, after a couple more years of all this. And we said, you know what? I think there's something here that I need to consider. And prayed about it a lot, talked to a lot of people, and it just made sense in a lot of ways for my family, traveling, etc. Not knowing anything would happen with COVID made a lot of sense. And so January of 2020, I was officially named the minister evangelist for the Church of Christ at Indian Land. We rented a facility. We kind of bounced around to some different facilities, but COVID hit. Actually, Amanda and I were in the Philippines when lockdown started happening. Even in the Philippines, it was a scramble to get back home. We were teaching a nursing seminar in Manila, Metro Manila, at a congregation that I love and still work with here from afar called Metro South Church of Christ in Pasay, Manila. Manila, a city of 14 million people. It makes Charlotte look a little bit small.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
And they need a lot of churches in Manila. So anyway, that was a great work, but we had to rush home. And upon returning home, we went exclusively online like most churches did.
Well, and for you guys, you didn't have a building.
Nope.
You couldn't rent the rec center anymore. The local school wouldn't let you in.
Right.
You had to do that.
We were stuck. Yeah, we were stuck with online only. And I went through that, and I'm a people person, and so for me, that was a challenge. For my sermons and Bible lessons to be to a camera and not to have a face, a smile, a head nod, an amen. That was difficult. But made it through, and after a number of months, we were able to get permission to meet back at the recreational center, and then.
Meanwhile, your building's being built.
Our building's being built.
Thanks to COVID, construction's going up like crazy. I mean, that was good.
Yeah. So construction proceeded, and that was good. Our very first Sunday prior to COVID, we were around 72. After COVID, and we began meeting back again, we were 30s, 40s, 50s, and then we sort of plateaued between 55 and 65. Which
was hard in part because you weren't even a brand new congregation. You weren't even fully sure who the membership was per se, right? I mean, you kind of knew who had been committed all along.
Yes.
But, it was very transient, wasn't it? Yeah.
And but as soon as we got into our building, Our very first, we didn't even really advertise it because we were just trying to get in there and get an idea of how things are going to work. And so our first Sunday wasn't heavily advertised, and we had around 65 people.
Great.
The next Sunday we were up to nearly 90 people, and then it just kept climbing until now we're averaging somewhere between 95 to 114. And now that's an interesting concept too, just the concept of building evangelism, which I haven't always been real fond of the idea of a material building, but there is something there that seems to attract.
People know where you are.
Yep.
If nothing else, they're intrigued, right? What is this place?
Yeah.
Some people just want to go inside and see what it looks like inside, right?
What are they doing in there?
What's happening in there, right? But no, that's wonderful. And in the meantime, too, it almost seems like while the congregation is sort of getting boots on the ground, quite literally, at the same time, the community is sort of getting its legs under it. I mean, we mentioned the fire station, those sorts of things that are being finalized and sort of coming of age, so to speak, sort of becoming a reality, while at the same time, the Indian Land congregation is doing that. And so that was a neat parallel, I thought. Wow. And, you're able to attend those things and be a part of ribbon cutting ceremonies and all that stuff, which was just fantastic. How do you think the mission work that you did and your training as a missionary has prepared you for this role? I was thinking, you were talking, they were going through trying to interview different guys. This is a really unique ministry. I mean, frankly, not everybody would have the skill set to step into something like this. Most of us are used to stepping into an established ministry. It's not like everybody there are brand new Christians. I mean, many of them came from here and from other places. But at the same time, like you said, you're establishing norms, trying to figure out exactly how do you think your training has helped you to very much be still a missionary, but domestic and even localized in many ways?
That's a great question. You mentioned, I knew a good solid group of people who came from Gold Hill Road, which I did. I've known some of these people for 10 years. And I do want to make mention that there's some incredible people, and that's what the church is really about. It's about the people that God loves, God's people, and worshiping God together. And there's some really fantastic people who, I think that was one of the reasons I said, you know what, I need to do this, because the people who I got to work with, just really great people. Now, that being said, mission work has helped me in a number of ways. Two terms that come to my mind right off are flexibility and adaptability. The mission field is oftentimes unpredictable, inclement weather, flights getting delayed, or transportation, sicknesses. There's all these different delays in the Lord's work that may seem physical in nature. But then there's also people, and people can sometimes be unpredictable. And so flexibility and adaptability have really been really important on the mission field, and I see that as something important here, especially specifically in my role as an evangelist and as a minister. Mission work really prepared me to be an engineer, a businessman, a salesman, a public speaker, a counselor, a navigator, a dreamer. I wore many hats on the mission field, and any missionary understands what I'm talking about, all the different things that you have to do, and really that you're excited to do for the Lord's kingdom. You bring those types of things to a new work that's being built from the ground up. When there's building, and there's meeting new people, and there's getting involved in the community, and then there's networking. The Greater Indian Land Chamber of Commerce was just starting about the same time we were trying to get into our building, and so and that's something I'll share with you guys here soon about some of the things getting involved in the community. But mission work also taught me about failure. I was involved in a few different preaching schools, and I met some failure there. And sometimes the failure was with great Christian people I was working with. The first mission team that I was a part of broke up. And that was a difficult thing. And there was some failure there that I had to work through. And I learned a lot. About my missionary philosophy from a paternal standpoint to more of an indigenous standpoint of mission work and the methodology there. But also on the mission field, what I also learned was how I thought that so-and-so was going to be a great preacher because I had discipled them. They had all the talents and the abilities, and then come to find out these same men are still on the wayside, yet to come back today. And there's been some heartache, some disappointments. I thought I saw something that would really happen there. The opposite also holds true on the mission field, where I saw guys that I thought, I'm just not sure they're going to make it. I'm just not sure that they have the ability. I'm just not sure that that they've got what it takes, or that they're going to be able to complete what is the task set before them. I'm reminded in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 25 through 29, for the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For considering your calling, brothers, not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. There are some incredible stories I learned on the mission field, how some people who may seem to be at a disadvantage are some of the most incredible evangelists that I know in Kenya right now, doing incredible work. And I completely underestimated them. And so those are things that I learned, that, it's faith in God, and it's allowing God's work and his word to work in people's lives. A lot of planning went into mission work, as it does local work. And I always say, use a pencil. God uses a pen.
You'll need the eraser.
We use the pencil with the eraser. And that's, coming from Luke chapter 14, for which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it. And there needs to be a great accounting of cost. I mean, what does this look like? How can I best serve in this area? What is it going to take? How will this happen? I've seen a lot of things get started and not finish, and sometimes that can be more devastating.
Yeah. Be best just not to go out of the gate with it all.
Yeah, sure.
First. Yeah,
sure.
So talk to us a little, if you don't mind, about your strategy now in this community as the minister of this new congregation. I mean, a lot of moving parts there, to your point about mission work and the parallels. What's your strategy? I know a lot of the things you are doing, but sort of tell us about what you're hoping to accomplish and the pieces you're putting into place to do it.
Yeah, great question. I think that's probably fresh on the minds of many preachers. Listen, I'm excited, but how do I do this? What can I do to stimulate more growth, etc.? First, I have to appreciate who I am and how God made me. I am not a PhD pulpiteer guy. I'm sure I preach, and I like to preach, but I'm a people guy, and I just have to know that. I love being around people. I love having small groups, Bible studies. I love the evangelism side of ministry, where we're opening our Bibles and we're asking questions and we're searching the scriptures, and I love being there with people at their events and their life events, and that's so understanding who I am has been really helpful. And those were discussions that were had upon my interview. Yeah. Here's who I am. This is who you're hiring. You're hiring an evangelist. And that's what they wanted. They said, hey, this is what we need to start this congregation.
And by the way, if you're not a people person, you're going to have trouble in ministry anyway. I mean, some guys are in situations where they can just be the pulpit guy. Anyway, you need to be a people person, even in the pulpit, right? I mean, if you're not going to connect.
Yeah. And so I'd say that my strategy is really it's sharing God's word with people and where they are. I guess I've had enough Bible studies. I've used, Ivan Stewart, if some people can remember him, who developed the Open Bible Study system. I've sat with him and I've gone through that system. I've used that system. I've looked at fishers of men. I've done other things, but after the years of going through different things, I've come to the point of being somewhat flexible in my Bible study to accommodate people. Yeah. Where are people? So a lot of times I find that starting a Bible study with the study of dispensations is helpful, helping us understand what dispensation we're in now, and patriarchal, Mosaic, and the Christian dispensation, and which one we're not in. We're not in the Mosaic dispensation now, and that makes sense to you or I, but for some that may not be as clear.
No, you're right.
But I guess by and large is developing relationships, being there with people, being there for people, lots of prayer and lots of encouragement to pray with people and lots of encouragement for people to pray, but then just Bible studies and Bible studies. Right. And so there's no real specific strategy there. However, I will say this, I think this ties into maybe a really important piece for today. The Greater Indian Land Chamber of Commerce was developing about the same time that we were over there. I was extended an invitation by one of our members who was in Rotary to come speak at a Rotary meeting. Oh. I did. There are 2 Rotaries in Indian Land, a morning group and a lunch group. And I spoke at the lunch group. Well, then the morning group found out about it. And they said, would you come speak to us? I did. Made some great contacts and friends there, and they said the leader, the president there said, "Hey, I'm starting the Greater Indian Land Chamber of Commerce. Why don't you come and come check it out?" And I did. I went back to my shepherds and said, "Would you guys consider sponsoring me to be where I could represent the Church of Christ as a religious organization in the Greater Indian Land Chamber of Commerce?" And they said yes. And so I'm an official member representing the Church of Christ. They made me a captain, a liaison for membership development, and here we're growing this chamber and by leaps and bounds. We started off with a handful of people, and we're over 100 people now, and we're flying through memberships and left and right. And there's so many things going on that I can't even keep up with them. There's so many things in the Indian Land community, and so I think a lesson learned there, though, for me and maybe for other preachers is be willing to accept an invitation. Yeah. Because you just might not know where it leads you and the opportunities that get created because you took an invitation to go somewhere.
Well, and not to just discount it and cast it off. Like, I got more important stuff to do. Well, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly. This is the important thing to do.
This is it.
Exactly. Great point.
Yeah, that's neat. I know you're involved a lot social media-wise as well, specifically for the church. I think many of us are doing things like that. Are you hearing a lot of that, getting connections from those outreaches as well?
So we actually had a really nice lady come and visit us twice now. And when she came to visit us the first time, she said, "I know you, but you probably don't know me. I've been watching you online." Yeah.
Because we're all televangelists these days.
Right. All of a sudden, I'm on YouTube all of a sudden, And she's telling me she's coming from north of Charlotte.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a bit of a drive, actually. And she said, "I want to come here. I've been listening to your message, and I want to come here." And I said, "Okay, well, are you familiar with the Church of Christ in any way?" "No, I ran into you online." And then I thought, wow. So there's been some of that. And my thought process online, and even like with your podcasts, which are awesome. Thank you. I'm not a podcaster. I'm more of an evangelist person, but there is a necessity, I think, that we need to address with the social media platforms. I think we need to get something out there. My reach for social media is always geared toward the immediate vicinity of the 29707 zip code of Indian Land. There's thousands of people, thousands and thousands. And so everything that I do social media wise, which I've just started this Faith-Filled Fridays, just 3-minute episodes I'm going to post every Friday. But the purpose of it is for myself, and sometimes like you're interviewing me and we're talking here together, to host others, to share their stories, to share Bible class material, to share teachings and testimonies, etc. So that those who are passing through our Instagram, our website, or our Facebook pages, they can sort of window shop and say,
That's right.
"Oh, hey, look, there's somebody else in the congregation," and they can sort of get to know us. So, taking on this idea of reaching the nation.
Yeah.
Some people like you need to do that with the podcasting and these sort of things where you have this huge reach. But somebody like me that might be maybe a little more intimidated by the volume and trying to keep up with just episodes, et cetera, of trying to just make some short reaches. And I think that we should just focus. That's helped me just to focus on the local area of Indian Land. That's my reach zone there.
Well, and I'll say, most of the hosts on the Light Network are preachers.
Yeah.
And what we say is local ministry comes first.
There you go.
And whatever we're able to do to talk with the brotherhood, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's really encouraging. It's fun to do.
Yes.
But, I'm interested in, for us, 29708,
Yeah.
that's what we're interested in.
Yeah.
And you're right. That comes first. And ultimately, social media is about person-to-person connections.
Sure.
That's what we're wanting. If that starts in a Facebook message and then translates into a one-to-one conversation in person somewhere, that's the goal, right?
That's the win.
Yeah, that's it. So probably few of us who are a part of this podcast today, myself included, will have or have had an opportunity like you do to minister to a brand new church and a brand new community. Do you have advice for us? I'm a preacher at a church that's now 25 years old. Most people probably are preaching for congregations that are even older than that. What advice do you have for us from your perspective? A missionary, foreign and now domestic, localized in 29707 Indian Land, South Carolina. What would you say to encourage us today?
So that goes back to counting the cost. Before you shoot out of the gun and say, you know what, I'm going to go evangelize, I'm going to go make contacts, I'm going to advertise, I'm going to set this up, I'm going to do this. It's important to make sure that you're surrounded with really great people who can help.
Don't try and do it all yourself.
Right.
Good.
There's a great core group of people that wanted to plant this congregation in Indian Land, and they do a lot of work, and they really help me. That's not so that I can have a posh job and kick back, but they're huge encouragers. They lighten the load. Some people are willing right off the bat to help with Bible studies and follow-ups and lots of encouragers, lots of people inviting others out to lunch.
Yeah.
You need that atmosphere where you have multiple points of contact for visitors, for prospects. And the only way to do that is to follow Jesus' discipleship model, which is more than Jesus. It was also 12 other guys.
Imagine that.
So surrounding yourself with a group of people who are really dedicated to the same work and really want to see the same things done. That would be the first thing I'd have to say. But just trying to get involved. It's amazing. You can go out there and try to door knock. You can go out there and try to get involved with social media. But I would suggest this. The first thing that I did from a community standpoint, besides Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce, was the Indian Land Action Council posted on Facebook that they were going to have a park cleanup at one of the only park in Indian Land that's got a playground.
Okay.
And I went. And we were wheelbarrowing mulch and to several different spots. And as I went there, I met some really great people, and they got to know who I was. And hey, who are you? Oh, are you with that new congregation? Oh, yes, it's off Jim Wilson Road. Oh, yeah, we got to come visit sometime. And it's just being with the people. And then out from there came an invitation to another event which I went to, which is a community trash cleanup on 521, the busy highway. And then from there comes another invitation. And so just being present in community events, trash pickups, start there. You'll be surprised at what comes out of that.
Yeah.
Those have been huge for me. I've made friendships. In fact, they gave us an Indian Land, the Greater Indian Land Chamber of Commerce gave us a ribbon cutting. So every February 21st, in Indian Land officially will be the Church of Christ at Indian Land Day.
Nice.
Hereforth. And so,
hereforth.
And going forward.
So let it be written. So let it be
exactly.
Done.
So we have a little placard that the councilmen presented us. And,
that's cool.
And all that was just because I accepted some invitations. I got involved in the community. And I guess that's what I'm trying to stress is get involved in the community. During COVID, we made goodie bags for the fire department and went and passed them out, let them know we cared about them. We gave them like Chick-fil-A gift cards. We gave them some masks. We gave them some hand sanitizers and some snacks. Did the same thing with emergency medical services, EMTs, the people who drive the ambulances. We did that. We also did the same type of approach for the Indian Land Elementary School and took gift bags to the teachers there. And these were ideas from within our congregation. These were not my ideas, but they were great ideas. And just getting involved in the community, saying, we are your ally here. We are a great group of God's people that want to help this community.
We're here and we care.
We're here and we care.
Yeah. Even if you made one and we say this, but I don't know that we really mean it. Even if you made one contact from those efforts, that would have been worth it.
Yes.
Even if you went to clean up the playground and you got one Bible study out of it, and that's all it was just one study, and then the person didn't show up anymore. That would have been worth the effort. And I think so often we preach that stuff, but we don't always live it.
Sure.
Yeah. It made me think of Colossians 4:2, where, Paul says, pray that God would open to us a door for the word to speak the mystery of Christ.
Amen.
And but we have to position ourselves in front of the door so that when it's open, we recognize and it can walk through.
That's right.
And most often, in my experience, it's not the door of my office that God is opening, telling me, now here, walk through this. Here's your Bible study on the other side of that door. It's somewhere away from there, which is important to think about. This is great. Chad, in just a minute, I'll let you, if you got any more parting words or final thoughts, we'll go through some of that together. Appreciate all of you joining us for this edition of Preachers in Training. This is Season 13, Episode 9, which implies that there are quite a few other episodes. If you haven't heard them, go and find them on our website, thelightnetwork.tv. They're also available in any podcast platform. Just search for Preachers in Training, or better yet, search for The Light Network, where you can find not only this podcast, but about 9 other full podcast shows that release brand new episodes most every week. We're also available on YouTube by searching for The Light Network. You can watch this if you prefer to see Chad's lovely form and face today. And I'll focus it more on that half of the screen than on my half of the screen. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you've got questions, comments, thoughts, future episode ideas, we want to hear from you. Preachers@thelightnetwork.tv is the email address, and we would love very much to hear from you as we continue planning future episodes and future seasons, the Lord willing, as God continues to bless the work that we're blessed to do here at the Light Network. Thank you for listening. We're talking to Chad Garrett, minister of the Church of Christ in Indian Land, ministering to a church plant in a new community. Final thoughts, wrapping up, summary, what do you want to tell us in conclusion today?
In conclusion, the vision for planning a new congregation, it came from an existing eldership who saw an opportunity to do mission work in our own country, which is awesome. Yeah. The
really
Bible
in
says
our own backyard almost.
Yeah, that's right. And the Bible says in Titus chapter 1:5, this is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remained into order and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. I want to stress how important it is in a new work to establish eldership as quickly as possible. Fortunately for our work, we had men who had known much of the people we went with over there from Gold Hill Road. They had been at Gold Hill Road for 20 years.
Many of them serving as deacons here.
Deacons,
like
that's
that.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Very qualified men, and I pushed and pushed, and it wasn't difficult to push at all.
Yeah.
They were willing to serve, but what I wanted was right out of the gun, and of course we started in January, but by about the third week in February, we officially had 4 men who stepped forward, and the congregation and I accepted them as our shepherd elders, our elder shepherds. And we have continued to stress the word shepherd instead of the word elder. And they have done a great job, continue to do a great job, and have provided tremendous stability for the work. It's biblical. There's a reason why God puts this in writing and says, do this. And so if I could stress that in a new work, you've got to get that done. That is so important.
Good stuff. I love it. Thank you, Chad, for your time today.
Thanks
been
for having me.
fantastic. We really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to this episode of Preachers in Training. We're back next Thursday and every Thursday from BeLightNetwork.tv. Until then, let's go preach the word.
Amen.